Hi everyone! In this video we're going to build up our knowledge of consumer laws and how they affect businesses in Australia. So how can we approach this? Firstly, we'll look at why consumer laws have been created and why it is important that businesses stay up to date on legislation. We'll then look at the most important consumer laws in Australia and what they entail, and finish on why businesses must follow them. Before we dive into the current consumer laws in Australia, let's talk about why they've been developed. Well, consumer laws are designed to protect the rights of consumers and to identify the rights and responsibilities of businesses. These laws restrict how businesses sell their products by preventing them from acting dishonestly. Basically, they make sure that consumers are given a fair go. For businesses to remain compliant, they should be familiar with the laws that are relevant to them and keep up to date with any changes to the law. All staff must be trained properly so they can sell their products accurately and understand what customers' rights are if the product does not meet expectations. It is the business's responsibility to understand all relevant consumer laws and apply them to marketing practices to avoid serious consequences. Now we'll get into the actual laws that regulate businesses and consumers in Australia. Even though there are not too many to remember, it's important to grasp the name of the law, the year it was created, and what it means for businesses and consumers. You want to be as detailed as possible. This will ensure you're one step closer to reaching those top marks. The first piece of legislation we'll be covering is the ACL. This stands for Australian Consumer Law and it was introduced in 2011. It is a single national law which means greater clarity and consistency concerning marketing practices across the country. ACL benefits Australian society by making sure that all customers are given the same rights and all Australian businesses are subject to the same regulations. While the ACL 2011 is the name of the law, it's equally important to remember who enforces the law. This Act is governed by the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, or ACCC. Other regulators of this Act include the Australian Securities and Investment Commission, or ASIC for short, and whatever the relevant consumer agency is in each state or territory. All these agencies are essentially the people who monitor businesses and ensure they follow the law. Secondly, the Competition and Consumer Act 2010, aka the CCA, is a really important piece of legislation that affects marketing and overall business activities in Australia. The CCA applies to practically all businesses, including the commercial activities of the government. It exists for two main purposes. The first being to protect consumers against unfair practices. For example, business practices such as misleading customers through advertising or purposely lying about the contents or origin of products are banned. The second reason is to make sure that businesses do not engage in practices that restrict competition or are unfair. This is because the government wants many businesses to operate at the same time to encourage competition, which gives consumers a variety of choices and stimulates economic growth. And just like Australian consumer law, the Competition and Consumer Act is enforced by the ACCC and ASIC along with other relevant consumer agencies. But what happens when a business doesn't follow these laws? Let's get into this now. Neglecting to obey the law can result in serious financial or other penalties. First of all, if a business breaks consumer law, they have to deal with the cost, time, and effort of having to refund the customer or repair and replace their items. Secondly, large fines, legal fees, or even imprisonment would not only impact profits in the short run, but can harm relationships with customers by breaching trust. This would mean the business's reputation could be damaged, which would reduce sales and harm the survival of the firm in the long run. In the event of a breach, the ACCC can take civil or criminal action against the business or individuals involved. When businesses make false claims about products, the ACCC can issue infringement notices. Or they can issue public warning notices that alert consumers when they suspect illegal activities are taking place. Customers can even sue the business for compensation, and if they win the case, the bills will really start to add up. Even more seriously, under the Competition and Consumer Act, courts can impose penalties of up to $1.1 million for companies or over $200,000 for individual illegal behaviour. As you can imagine, this will seriously impact the business's paycheck. Essentially, it's expensive and inconvenient when businesses breach the law, so the best tactic is just to obey it. Well, that finishes off our exploration of consumer law in Australia. The main takeaway points were why consumer law exists, which is to protect consumers and make sure businesses operate fairly. Then we looked at the ACL and the CCA 2010, which are the most important pieces of legislation governing marketing in Australia. We also investigated the different agencies responsible for enforcing these laws, with the main ones being the ACCC and ASIC. We finished by checking out the consequences of breaching these laws, which taught us that following the law is the way to go when operating a business. That's all for now. I'll see you soon.